Hello, Teresa back again with today's task, slow stitch on cocoa dyed paper. This is cocoa dyed paper that I've already used, already done. And if you can see, that is where I lent it up against some dyeing that I had done to berries, so you'll have to excuse that. But if I turn it round like this, you can see how organic it looks. Now, I've used cocoa because I actually think it has a nicer effect than tea and coffee. This area here is where the cocoa all flowed down to. You can see it's made some nice stems and it looks almost flower-like, with the long stems stretching right up and the shorter ones there, which gives us the contrast and the thickness of that stem there. That's where it's just run, so that's nothing to worry about. This is actually textured, and I will show you how to do that as we move on with glue. If you look closely, you can see it's almost got a tree bark effect there. So we will be using this one, and this is the second one that we'll be using. Once again, cocoa dyed, cocoa left to run on the paper, and it just gives this lovely feeling of growth. It looks plant-like and organic, and I just love this effect. I just think it's nicer than dyeing the whole paper, but then this serves the purpose that we want. This is another one. I did 3, and from the 3 I'm going to take 2. And I think this one is lovely. It reminds me of irises on their long stalks, and that's just a different effect upside down. Oh, that is actually the right way, the way the cocoa just ran down the paper. So from those 3 I'm going to choose 2, and I just love that one. I just love the big spaces. And that's the back, and funnily enough it hasn't come through the back, but it does give a nice effect. Now on the back of the paper, the first thing to do is put some iron-on Vilene. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend it because it gives the paper a certain strength. So I'm just going to pop that on, pin it in place. No, I'm not going to pin it in place. Oh, I'm lying. As you can probably guess, this is a voiceover again. I'm not very good at voiceovers. So I'm ironing that into position. Nice hot iron. Now those tea towels look really grubby, but these are specifically for ironing and cleaning my iron with the edge of the table. But I can assure you they are clean. Oh, they do look a bit manky, don't they, really? I should have said that I'm using my neighbour's. Should have lied, but no, I can't, they're mine. So that is now stuck down really well, and it's nice and firm. And that's given the paper a nice bit of, oh, not too well actually. See, I'm lying again, oh my goodness. So just put that down. And at that point I did turn the iron up slightly. That's it. So press that into place. Press it or iron it. That's better. And right over the top as well. Get out any little crinkles there. And that just adds to it. It just seems to make it a little bit more firmer. I do love this one particularly because I love the big shapes there, the long shapes. Look, that nice long fat shape against the skinny one. Looks as if I'm obsessed with the back of it, doesn't it? Can you see the shapes there? That's almost tree bark looking, look. See how that's picked up the shapes on the back? Yes, I like that one. And that is the way that I shall use it. At this stage I do have a rough idea of what the design that was going on the front. Right, once again the calico. You might not have calico, but have another. If you have another piece of fabric, pop it on the back. You don't want anything too thick, otherwise it's going to make your stitching difficult. So now this one has the calico on the back. Have I put the calico on the back yet? Now this is PVA glue, and you can see the consistency. It's been mixed with water to take away the thickness, and as you can see it's quite runny. Now I'm just coating that, the whole lot, with the PVA glue, and that adds to the thickness and to the strength, so when you're stitching you won't pull the paper, you won't tear the paper. And that is left to dry. It's curling up. It will curl up, but don't worry about that. It's just easy enough to unroll. It isn't going to do any damage. Right, now the pins are just to keep it in place while it dries. So, and that will stop it curling, obviously. It can't move now. So that's left to dry. And now I think I left that to dry overnight because I did several of these. I'm not sure how long different ones were left, but I imagine that was left with the others overnight. And there we go. So that is really strong now. That's a very strong paper. And that looks terrible, doesn't it? That looks scary stuff. But I am actually ironing on the front over the glue. Now that is my craft iron. That isn't my my garment iron. Although if it were, I probably wouldn't tell you anyway. Now, can you see the lovely texture that now has? And that is definitely tree bark effect. I have some here, and if you can, that is the effect. And the heat of the iron just crinkles up the glue slightly, and it gives a wonderful texture. Oh, so now I've gone back to the calico. I must have been measuring it in the last frame, and that is pinned all the way around. Now if you think, obviously you've probably got an idea of what's coming next. If I'm pinning, you know the next thing's going to be tacking. If you think that you know, you're confident enough to just dispense with the pins and just tack all the way around without pinning, then go for it. These courses are really aimed at beginners or people who haven't tried this before. So sometimes you might think, well, that's a long way of doing it, but by all means you take a shortcut. This is about you and how you work. So now I've got the thread double there, and that's just ordinary sewing thread. It's a very cheap, weak one. It wouldn't go in the sewing machine because it's too cheap and weak, but it's ideal tacking cotton. Not in the end, so not the end, and with a nice long fine pointed needle, just tack around the edge. Now you can see, because it's a nice long needle, you can just pop it in and out, get several pieces of fabric on the needle before pulling it through. Now you need a nice fine needle with a nice sharp end to go through what is now paper, violin and calico, 3 layers. Now I'm going to go all the way around the edge. And that is it all done now. That's all tacked around the edge. Just to show you the back. I just think that is lovely. That just looks so nice, that one. I'm not sure which one's my favourite. Now I'm running 2 at the same time. I'm going to do 2 of these at the same time. So I might leapfrog them occasionally. So this is the second one. So I've gone, the process is the same. All I'm doing is alternating them so I can get them done and finished at the same time. Now that is what I consider to be upside down. I prefer that way. That way you have the nice almost flower. It's suggesting flowers there. Flower heads and stems. And that really is just how the cocoa ran down the paper. And I was tickled pink when I saw these, because there was no thinking or wondering what to do, because they're just there. Now that is a photocopy of the flower one. I'm going to call that the flower one. And sometimes the photocopy picks out bits that you don't see yourself. Now the first thing to do on this is to draw round it. Now the 2 that I'm doing will be done differently. The method of working will be done differently. On this one, the flowers, I'm definitely going to make these into flower heads. So I want the basic shape all the way around the cocoa. All the way up what I'm calling the stems. And down. I'm actually looking at it here as well. I've got these in front of me. Right the way. That's a really nice task to do. I'm willing myself to lift that up so you can see it all. Oh, look at the screen. Look at the screen. I don't actually work in front of the screen. The screen's at the side. And I need to change this glasses to look at the screen. I've got 2 different types of glasses. Well, I have trifocals. Oh my goodness, I can't wear those. I can't wear those old fuddy-duddy things. So I'll change them for 2 pair. So I have to change my glasses to see the screen. And obviously I haven't done that. I'm so busy doing what I'm doing. You can lose yourself in these things. Around that one. Those darker areas there, those blobby bits, just where the cocoa gathered and stopped running. But I couldn't believe it, because shortly after doing this I went for a walk over the back to my local park, and around the lake there were irises. Well, I think they're irises. Very pretty yellow flowers. And I thought, oh my goodness, they look like cocoa marks. The same shape. Exactly the same shape as what I'm looking at on the screen. Now don't forget the design principle of exaggerate and eliminate. Now that is up to you, what you, with your piece of cocoa dyed paper, what you keep and what you eliminate. Some of these I've exaggerated, as you'll see later on. Now I've got some sheer fabric there, very pretty. that I'm going to place over, and that is just to give the background a nice sheer finish. Although at this stage I really doubted whether I would be able to see this sheer fabric. And I liked the green flowers on it, or the greenery. It just seemed to fit with what I had in mind. Sometimes when you start these, you don't have anything in mind, and it just grows as you do it. As we've said before, it's a work in progress. It's the progression of an idea. So as you're working, you'll get to a stage where you think this is, when you're working, you're doing your own work, and you're not nearly finished and you're only a couple of hours into it, you think this is complete and utter rubbish. That's okay, because we all go through that stage, and we all get through that stage to produce something really nice. So please don't give up at the rubbish stage, because when you start, it's all bits and pieces, and sometimes you can't actually see where it's leading or what the end result will be. But persevere, and you'll be surprised. I was surprised with one of these, and I thought, oh, this is looking like the pits. But when I finished them, I was really pleased. So I'm tacking this down now, pinned it, and then once again tacking, and never worry about the length or the neatness of your tacking stitches, because those come out, and that really is just to hold the fabric in place. I think some of you call it basting, and it's the same. I can't help thinking of Christmas when I hear basting. It's the only time I baste, and that's when I take the turkey out of the oven and put the fat over it. To me, that's basting. It looks as if I fastened up the video there, but I haven't. I think that's years and years of doing this. One of you lovely people mentioned that on one of your comments. Oh, it's so quick. But I think that is, and being, working as well with students, we're always pushed for time, always with one eye on the clock, as you teachers will know. One eye on the clock. Oh, I've got half an hour left, got 15 minutes left, I've got this left, got that left, got to tidy up. So it really is sometimes a real race. But I needn't race anymore. Look at me. I'm like a mad thing. I must learn to relax a bit. That is where mindfulness is really good when you do this. Mindfulness and slow stitch go hand in hand, and it's a wonderful thing to practice. The now, the here and the now. Don't think about tomorrow, and don't think about yesterday. Just think about what you're doing, and breathe, take nice breaths, enjoy what you're doing. But obviously I'm not practicing it there. Oh, it looks as if I'm hungry. I need my dinner. Right, just trim off around the edge. I didn't intend to do a voiceover, but sometimes my my software plays up a bit, and I did actually do the voice, the audio, at the same time as the video, but I wasn't happy with it. I just wasn't happy. Now you can see at this stage, look, you can see the design showing through the fabric, and there it is. So the photocopy there is for reference, just going over and pointing out the lovely areas that I want to highlight, that I want to exaggerate. Right, I'm cutting around some of these shapes. I'm sure like many of you, many crafters, we never grew out of that primary school thing of cutting and crayoning and painting. Even now, looking at crayons, I get that feeling of going back to school in September where we all needed new crayons and pencil cases, and I still get that excitement. My goodness, I never got over that. And the same thing of fabric. Right, that is the exact, well, it should be the exact shape because I've just traced it, or I've just cut it out. Right, I've decided to do that in green. Now all the pieces that I'm using here, once again, are all scraps. So you might think, oh, she used that before on the rooster, or she used that before on the other journal. That's because I do use up a lot of scraps. I think as crafters we could spend, well, we do, don't we? We do. We spend hundreds of pounds on equipment and fabrics. And as most of you know, who's been following me, that my fabrics donations, I very rarely buy fabric. I buy calico. What do I buy? Oh, Hessian. And Hessian I know from Cynthia. Thank you very much for telling me that. In America, you call it burlap. And no, I didn't think you were criticising me for 1 minute at all. And I just think it's lovely that we can share things like this. Because don't forget, although I'm teaching this, I'm still learning. You know, we never stop learning. So, yeah, I do appreciate that. And I think it was lovely, Cynthia. And thank you very much for that. Thank you. And something you said, Cynthia, made me think that it's it's time to set up a Facebook group, I think, so we can all engage and interact with what we're making and comment, because there's such lovely comments going on at the moment, and I think a Facebook group would be ideal. So I will pull my socks up with that one and get to and make this Facebook group, and it'll be a very exclusive small group, or as big as the subscribers get, and it will be just for subscribers and people who take this seriously. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you on it, or when I get round to it. Right, so having said all that, I've now cut out the green piece. To my mind, in my head, that's like a clump of grass. And it's in the distance. This bit is about perspective, I think. That is a little bit in the distance, so you can't see the grass as little strands of grass, leaves. So that is a clump. So I'm quite happy with that, and that will be pinned there. Oh, that's it, I moved it up. Yep, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be exact. You could do this freehand if you're good at drawing. And those scissors there, as some of you know, were hairdressing scissors. But they're the nicest scissors I think I've got for this sort of thing. I bought a hairdressing kit, and used it a couple of times and I messed the hair up so much, couldn't possibly use it again. But I thought, I'm not throwing the scissors. They're wonderful scissors, lovely for cutting paper. Now that fits there. Doesn't fit exact, I can see that from here. That's not exact, but it doesn't matter. It's just like a blueprint. Now as you can see, these are all bits and pieces. Little bits there. Oh, I can see something there that I need in the project I'm doing at the moment. I'll have to hook those out. Yeah, see, some of them are really scruffy. That piece there was dyed with berries, piece of satin, and I dyed that with frozen berries, fruits of the wood. Same with that lace, that lace there, and that is how that splodge of purple berry dye got onto the other piece of cocoa dyed paper that I pointed out to you. Or was it on this? I think it was actually on this piece. There was a big splodge of purple, and that was from this dyeing. And that made such a lovely pink. And you know, that is fine for what we use it for, but it would dye. It would run. The dye would come out if it was to be washed, because it hasn't been fixed. Nice pink. At this stage in my head, I wanted to use green and pink with a little bit of red. I wanted it to be nice and summery, almost poppy-like. So you'll see quite a bit of pink and green. Right, what I'm doing now, I'm just going to say hello to some new subbies, some new subscribers. While you keep watching that, I'm going to say, and it's the first time I've done this, welcome to Hummer, Robin, Cecilia, Di, Best Nan 50, and I think actually Best Nan that I'm actually the best Nan. I'm not 50. Hello to Joyce, Angela, Michelle, Marcella, Nat Teasering, Cynthia, and Joe. Joe and I have made friends through Facebook, and we're about to meet soon. But I'd like to say welcome to you all, and I just thought I would throw that in. Now, as you can see at the screen, I went away and I carried on, and this is what I've come up with so far. No secrets there. I did exactly the same. I cut out the shapes from the paper. From there, I cut them out from fabric, and I've laid them down. I've applied them, so it's applique. Some would call it collage because it's actually on a paper background, so you can call it what you like. I shall call it applique collage. Now these need to be tacked down. Now I would actually go to the trouble of tacking these down, because then you can remove the pins, and it will make it a lot easier to work. Now I'm not suggesting that you tack each one individually, go round the shape completely up and down. Just go through each part and just catch them. If you can see, I'm just going through each piece of fabric to catch it in place. There I've done 1, 2, 3, I think I've done 4 pieces there, caught 4 pieces of fabric with the one stitch. And it doesn't matter how messy this is, how untidy it is, how big your stitches are, because as I said before, they will be coming out. There, take the pins out now as you do it. You'll be surprised how quickly you can do this. And believe it or not, it actually starts to take shape. As soon as you do this and take the pins out, it starts to take shape. Through the middle. And of course, if there's anything there you don't like, you just remove it. And the good thing is about this is that you'll all have something different. Whether you use tea, cocoa or coffee, yours, this sounds awful, your streaks of fluid on the paper will be different to everybody else's. And that was when it would be nice to have a Facebook group so we can all show each other what we've come up with. Right, so that's, you see how quickly that's happening. And take the pins out. Pins are really good for holding things down, but you really don't want to sew with the pins in place because the thread has a habit of getting round the heads. Right, so I will carry on with that. And here it is finished, tacked. That's all been tacked down now in place, and you can see how firm it's being held. And that's the back. Look, no rhyme or reason, no structure, but every piece of fabric there has been held down. Right, that shape has been divided into two. Instead of one big shape there, I've divided that into two flower heads. Now, I love lace, as some of you know, and it's always a great temptation to put lace on whatever I'm doing. And here I'm working out where I can put the lace. Netting. I love netting because it creates dimension. If you can see how that looks on the green, it gives it a depth. So, especially the dark colours. At the moment, it looks flat, so it needs something just to give it a little bit more texture and to give it a dimension. So this is the fun bit, playing around with the scraps that you have, just to see where, and that looks as if it's meant to go there. Just to see what you come up with, and then pin what you like in place with a view to moving it. Yeah, I like that. Right, some more tacking. Right, now that, if I can see that properly, no, that is now going to border the first row of slow stitch, and the slow stitch, as you can see, is like very, very tiny tacking stitches, in and out and in and out. Just make that a bit bigger and then you can see them. Now the stitches don't all have to be the same length. You can vary the length, long and short. You can do what you want because it's your work. There's no right and wrong. No one's going to say, oh, you've done that wrong. They can't. It's your interpretation of whatever you're doing. So this will be the row that shows. There we go. So this will be filled in with mostly slow stitch, but I will be using some other stitches that we've used before, stitches we used in the last project. I'm not sure if I introduced any new ones. I don't think I did. That's it, so just keep turning your work to suit you. You could do this in a frame if you feel happier working in a frame. I do sometimes, but other times I just feel a frame gets in the way. And I'm just showing you now how I'm going to stitch. I'm going to stitch in a block. I'm going to go some way, different directions, across or up and down. And this is the first part done. And it really is a very first stage. There's so much more to do. But as you can see, all the related lines there of the bottom bit, the green. And there I've put the netting, I think it's organza, over the top, and I'm going to carry on and I'm going to cover all the flowers with that, because at the moment, yeah, and then I'm going to slow stitch around it, probably over them too. I'm not quite sure yet, but I just know that at the moment the colours are a bit too bright for what I need. I love bright colours, so I'm going to cover the whole lot in these tiny pieces that I have, and they're all different shades actually, white, pink, I think there might be a pale blue there, and it just gives that a little bit of tone, and as you can see it does give it depth, and it takes away the garish look, the garish brightness. You might want your piece to be really vivid and really bright, but for this particular item I just fancy having it less bright. As I said, I do love bright colours. So this for me is a learning curve. As I said, I'm learning as well. So I'm going to put those, hold those in place. But I just like that effect. You can still see the colour, but they're not as vivid. So I just pin that in place. And this is what I mean when I say it's the progression of an idea. At the start of this, I didn't set out to do this. This is something that evolved. I just happened to have all these pieces of scraps around me, and I thought, I wonder what that single flower would look like. The one in the left, top left. So I wonder what that would look like if I just put a little piece of this netting over the top. And I like that so much. I thought, oh, I wonder what it would like if I put some more on there. So it's a piece of work that evolves. It's not like it isn't like dressmaking where you have a definite pattern and you know exactly what the sequence is going to be, what fabric you're going to use, and what the finished effect is going to look like, because you're going to know what the sleeves are like, what length it is. It isn't that sort of discipline. Not that I'm knocking dressmaking, because I think that's a wonderful skill. It's a wonderful thing. But this is different. This is an art, and it's all about your self-awareness and your self-expression and how you're feeling the fabric and what you're looking at. I think possibly, and I might be wrong, there's more self-expression because there's not a blueprint, there isn't a pattern. Even down to dyeing the fabric, letting the cocoa run, sorry, not the fabric, the paper, letting the cocoa run down the paper. We have no idea of knowing how it's going to run, where it's going to run, where it's going to be thick or thin. It's a waiting game until you've finished. So even that in itself is an art, because we don't know. We don't set out saying, I'm going to make this into a flower. It just evolves as the liquid runs down the paper. And it's very exciting stuff. So I've pinned the net down, or the tulle organza. You can do this as well with vegetable bags, the netting. I have done that on some of the previous journals, and that is a really nice effect as well. But I want something a little daintier for this. So I'm slow stitching all the way around the edge of that to define the shape. The truth is, I don't know what I'm doing, because it just changes. I expect we're all the same. Starting off thinking, yes, I'm going to do this, and then get halfway through and think, no, I'm going to change directions. So there we go. Now, in order to get into the centre of this work, because it's quite firm, as you can see there, I folded it in half. I've managed to fold it in half, roll one side under to the half, and then keep that in one hand while you sew with the piece that hasn't been into the piece that hasn't been folded. It's such a nice thing to do. It's quite relaxing to watch as well. Now, I'm really sorry about this voiceover though. I must sort out this software and see what's going wrong with it. There we are, it's taking shape already. And the texture is quite nice as well. It looks nice and smooth, but it's picking up from the texture of the fabric underneath. It is really textured. Right, so here I've covered the whole lot, as you can see, the whole design with the fine sheer fabric, the tulle, tulle, net, and I have started slow stitching all the way around. Now, these are the stitches that I'm going to use. And on here we have cross stitch, herringbone stitch, blanket stitch, what else, and ladder stitch and feather stitch. So these areas will be done in different stitches. And this is the finished piece. So as you can see, it's very much like the actual original cocoa dyed paper, which is underneath, and that's the photocopy there. And I've exaggerated some of the areas to give a more flower look. and I think at one point I've added 2 more flower heads, but the basic design, the cocoa design, is still there. And that is the other one. So that is the 2. And there you go. So I was quite pleased with those. Now the first one, as I said, that I was leapfrogging these. That's been left bare. That is the cocoa. But on the second one, the one I'm looking at now, there's no cocoa showing through at all. I've put lace down and threaded a little bit of bling through it. And we've got some straight stitches there, I can see, and beads. So 2 different styles completely. And that one, as you can see, is finished. Now this is how we do the back. So we have some herringbone stitches there and there, and as you can see, and there, that's some couching there, that's wool woven between ladder stitch. Oh, that's better, make it a bit bigger, you can see the stitches more. And that is the cocoa paper. I thought I'd leave it on that one. So I've got 2 very distinctive, 2 very different looking journal covers. And that's the cocoa there again. And there. So with this one, I've just picked out certain areas. The yellow streak is applique. And obviously that's the back. And this is how we're going to add the lining. And if you've been following the other journals, this is exactly the same as we did the other journal covers. So that is the lining, the inside fabric, and that is quite a nice, it looks heavy, but it's quite a nice lightweight fabric. There. I'm going to pin all the way round. A nice thread there. And these going to be the borders, and it gives a nice frame. So these are the same length as what is now a journal cover, the cover, and they're 2 inches wide by the length of the journal, and I've already ironed them in half. You can see that that one is nicely creased because I've already ironed it. And it was touch and go whether I use the inside, the orange there, but I thought no, the orange might be too bright. So those are now put over the edges, and these will go over the top, and they're trimmed. So the longest pieces go down first, and then the shortest pieces go on the end, and as you can see, gives that a nice frame. And it cuts out the mitering as well. The mitered corners are quite difficult to do, and I think yeah, we can do the mitering, but there's no need to. This is a junk journal cover, so I just think we don't want anything too precise, too mitered. And I just think those sort of corners go with the whole thing about junk journaling. Now they've been pinned and they've been tacked. Now the stitches you use are entirely up to you. I've been through the stitches before on other videos, and I don't like to keep going over them again because of really boring you and thinking, oh no, more stitches. They're the same stitches we've been using. But if you feel in future that we still need to go over the stitches as we do them, then that's fine, I'll do that. So we have now the slow stitch or the running stitch, and this will go all the way around the edge. And I normally reckon that on a border this wide, which is 2 inches in total, folded in half, so each side is a half, is an inch. Yes, there they are. There are 3 rows of stitches. And that just suits a 1 inch border. Now, I've got the buttons, and I thought the buttons might make a nice addition. And I placed them in several positions. I liked that. And then I thought, no, I don't like that. Could take the blandness off that yellow fabric there. And then I thought, no. I decided, no, I wouldn't use the buttons. I went to an awful lot of trouble to find them as well. So I creased that with the iron. And there you have the first one. Now the process of putting the borders on, the frame if you like, and the lining is exactly the same for the next one. Nice crease down there. Now there's plenty of videos, and I do have one in one of my journals of how to attach the signatures. But I'm not doing it in this video because I've already done it before. But if you think I need to put the signatures in and show you how to do that in other videos, then I'll do that. As I say, I don't like to keep going over the same thing because it gets boring if you know what's coming, if you know what the stitches are, if you've been shown them, you know, several times. You don't need to see them again. So we've jumped now to the other one. I've got the borders on there, and as you can see, they're actually white, but on here they've come out as pink. Put on exactly the same way as for the other one. And I do love that lining there. So there we are. Now I've changed the style of working with these, running the 2 at the same time. I'm not sure how they've worked, if they've worked at all. If you have any comments about how you think they've worked, or keep to the other style, just do one at a time. But I thought, well, they're so easy to do. If I'm doing one, I might as well do 2. And right enough, I've ended up with 2. The paper I put in there is just to show you how it looks. But it doesn't make any difference, does it really? So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And I look forward to seeing you really, really soon. Thank you.